Hi, we meet again under discussion of igneous rock, and this one we want to do the close up for texture. Texture is to describe the individual grain inside the rock. If the individual grain is big enough, we call it as coarse grain. If the texture is small, we call it as fine grain salt. In the formation of igneous rock, we have different types of texture. Some of it is fine, some of it is coarse, some of it is combination of both. If you see this example, this is fine grain because you cannot see the individual grain using your own eyes. To compare with this, you can see the coarse grain size of texture, and this one we call it as coarse grain. And at the center is the combination of coarse and fine grain. So this is very much related to the cooling process. If the cooling process is fast, we get the fine grain. If the cooling process is slow, we get the coarse grain formation. And all of this is described into 6 different types of igneous rock texture. The first one is phaneritic, aphanitic, glassy, porphyritic, vesicular, and fragmental. Okay, in easier way to explain, phaneritic is very big or coarse grain. Aphanitic is small or fine grain. Glassy is more like glass. And the example for this is obsidian. Porphyritic is the combination of coarse and fine grain. And the vesicular is more like sponge because during the formation it entraps air. For fragmental, it is the ash and rock welded together. So let's look into the individual texture of igneous rock. So this is what we call as phaneritic texture. So for remembrance, this is coarse grain texture. The coarse grain meaning that it's big enough for our eyes to see, and because of the individual grain is big, we know that the cooling process is very slow because it allows for the crystallization to happen. And next is aphanitic texture. So you can see the example here. You cannot see the individual grain, so we describe this under fine grain texture, and we call it as aphanitic. Okay, whatever fine texture, we know that the cooling process is very rapid, and the formation of this type of rock most probably happen extrusively. Okay, the formation of this rock is extrusive. It also can be intrusive, but it depends on the locality. Next, we have obsidian. This one is obsidian. The texture is glassy types. The individual grain is almost impossible for us to see. So the cooling process must be very rapid. Either you are using magnifying glass or microscope, it's almost impossible for us to see the individual grain. Next, you have porphyritic texture. Okay, as you can see, this picture is very clear. You have here very large in terms of the individual grain and surrounded by a smaller fragment of rock which you cannot see the individual grain. So it is the combination of coarse and fine grain. So if you have both of it, we are calling that as porphyritic texture. And why this kind of rock can form? Because of a part of it having the experience of slow cooling process, and part of the a part of the rock experience very slow cooling process. Okay, the next one is vesicular. This is unique because of the sponge like of rock. How this happened? This is from the eruption of volcano. During the eruption, the lava entrap air and it's cooled almost immediately. So this rock have the fragment of rock, and this hole here is actually the entrap air. Okay, why this rock is unique? Because it has low density to compare with water. If you try to submerge this rock, you cannot, because of this rock eventually float in water. The example for this rock is scoria, and the examples are pumice and also vesicular basalt. The last one is fragmental texture, meaning that you have ash and rock welded together, most of the time from volcanic eruption. So this is rapid cooling process immediately after eruption. Conceived is broken angular fragment of rock material. So this is what it looks like for fragmental texture. So that is what you need to know about the texture of igneous rock.